Charles Baker was left to begin anew, steadily rebuilding his fortune in the southeastern part of the United States.
My grandfather went on to Florida, and my mother and grandmother saw him on a newsreel pounding the golden spike with the governor on a Florida railroad that went north and south.
He simply moved a long way away and became incredibly successful as an engineer.
Though Baker was often maligned and discredited by the Falls' new owners, in 1905 they continued with his plans and added a fifth generator in the cavity. In the intervening 5 years, electrical technology progressed by leaps and bounds. Instead of installing another water wheel, they purchased the latest Francis turbine. With far greater efficiency, the new turbine in Unit 5 could generate 5,600 kilowatts, almost as much as the first 4 units combined. The additional power allowed the company to offer electricity to customers in Everett, 44 miles away. Baker's successors decided to scrap the plans for the White River project, leaving its completion to Sidney Mitchell's Pacific Coast Power Company. By 1910, demand for electricity, however, continued to grow, prompting the Seattle-Tacoma Power Company to consider a second plant at Snoqualmie Falls.
What prompted the building of Plant 2 was the success of Plant 1. They could see that this was going to be a very successful endeavor.
It was always Baker's plan to expand the cavity in the opposite direction. But drilling and blasting threatened the operations of the Snoqualmie plant, on which so much of the Puget Sound region had come to rely. Managers opted for a second independent plant, whose powerhouse would be built well below the falls, beyond the mists that threatened the delicate electrical machinery. Though Plant 2 would not be built underground, it presented its own logistical challenges. The railroad that hauled in machinery, equipment, concrete, and sections of the penstock would need to be supplemented. On the Plant 1 side, narrow gauge tracks were laid down to the riverbank, where a ferry built on site would transport supplies across the river, up the other side, then down the face of the cliff in a series of switchbacks.
Plant 2 is another marvelous engineering feat. The big challenge was, in order to protect the scenery here, they had to bore a tunnel underneath the area where the old Snoqualmie Falls Lodge was.
The sounds of drills and blasting returned to Snoqualmie Falls as crews bored again through the solid rock on the north side of the river. This time excavating a tunnel 14 feet wide and 1,035 feet long. Blasting often sent rocks across the river and through the windows of Plant 1's transformer house. At the end of the tunnel, a 250 by 20-foot forebay was hewn out of rock to create a reservoir. From the forebay, water entered the gatehouse where headgates controlled the flow into the penstock. The riveted steel penstock dropped down the face of the cliff to produce a head of 255 feet, almost as strong as Plant 1. The structure built to house the generator was designed for industrial purposes only, with little regard for its architectural style. The newest Francis turbine was installed with room for 2 more units. This generator churned out 13,000 kilowatts, more than all 5 units of Plant 1. On December 1st, 1910, Plant 2 went online, doubling the output from Snoqualmie Falls. Current from Plant 2 helped power electric locomotives on the western end of the Chicago, Milwaukee, St. Paul and Pacific Railway as they came across Snoqualmie Pass from Ellensburg. Another big power customer moved into the area in 1914 when the Weyerhaeuser Company opened its mill just upstream and built the company town of Snoqualmie Falls. Earlier in 1912, the Seattle-Tacoma Power Company had accepted an offer of $150 a share from Stone & Webster to become part of Puget Sound Traction, Light and Power. The Boston firm now embraced all the electrical utilities of Puget Sound, from Bellingham to Olympia, and most of the street and interurban railways. The increasing capacity and spread of electricity fueled economic growth throughout the Puget Sound region and the country. Industrial use of electricity allowed plants to utilize labor-saving devices, increasing output and lowering prices. Electric interurbans ran from Tacoma to Bellingham, spurring the growth of suburbs and allowing farmers to sell their produce at city markets. In 1905, Seattle City Lights supplied electricity to its first residential customer. 4 years later, President Taft sat in the White House and pressed a telegraph key that illuminated the Alaska-Yukon Pacific Exposition on the University of Washington campus. Over the next 2 decades, electricity evolved from a mysterious force of nature into the most common household convenience. Electric irons, radios, clocks, toasters, and refrigerators fueled the Roaring '20s. Demand for electricity continued to grow almost exponentially over the decades as the Northwest contributed to the war effort and the population boomed in the subsequent years. In July 1957, the utility company, now called Puget Power, expanded Plant 2 with a second penstock and a new vertically mounted Francis turbine. The new generator induced 20,500 kilowatts of electricity, an amount nearly equal to the output of Plant 1 and 2 combined. The steady march of technology kept pace with the growing demand for power, continuing to prove Baker's theory that water power could fuel the future. As the politics of the past became a distant memory, Puget Power had begun to fully acknowledge Baker's contribution, which had largely been ignored. In the spring of 1945, they underwrote a radio play explaining Baker's role in the origins of their company.
When I heard it as a child, I thought it was kind of neat that my grandfather was on the radio and that his life was being told.
Charles Baker had a daring dream for those early days, and whenever he expressed his plans, people would call him an idle dreamer.
It might even be that this falls right here will someday be used to generate power for places as far away as, Seattle maybe. And Ed, I think I'm the man to see that plan carried out.
When we go back and visit the falls, it's always something that the family has felt a part of, and it's part of our ancestry. I'm, in a sense, a bit overwhelmed in the fact that my grandfather accomplished this.
From its audacious beginnings deep in a cavity beneath Snoqualmie Falls, a power company emerged that proved the viability of water-generated electricity transmitted over hundreds of miles. It set the stage for what would become known today as Puget Sound Energy. Snoqualmie Falls generates a total of 44,400 kilowatts today, enough to light more than 33,000 homes. The prophecy of Moon the Transformer that this lofty cataract would provide sustenance for its people still rings true today and for the known future. A visit to the plant is like traveling back in time more than a century.
When you drop down into the cavity, you realize right away that you have stepped back in time.
In this power plant, not only does the sense of place come from the buildings and the structures, they come from the actual machinery that's being used to generate the power.
You look out onto the top of 4 units that actually existed in their original form for 110 years.
What you're seeing are the same turbines, the same generators. Every single one of those is original.
The lights that were put at the end of the cavity are still there, 1898.
Staring at the hypnotic, cascading falls, one man engineered a means to harness its power, and in so doing, Charles Baker ushered in the age of electricity to this corner of our nation. Defying contemporary scientific notions and the onslaught of political slings and arrows, Baker held confident in a technology still in the earliest days of its infancy. The power plant at Snoqualmie Falls was an engineering marvel of the 19th century that brought power to the masses and forever changed the lives of those living in the Pacific Northwest.
Father and I built the plant with the result that there is no better built plant in the world. It speaks for itself in mockery of our defamers. Snoqualmie will still stand for centuries, and for centuries to come, it will still have the same duty to perform and will perform it faithfully. The same rock chamber will be there and will contain generation after generation of new water wheels and generators with the same never-ceasing din of industry still converting the waste energy of nature to the uses of mankind. Charles Hinckley Baker, 1908.